To Democrats, I would remind you that we still have the largest majority in decades, and the people expect us to solve problems, not run for the hills. And if the Republican leadership is going to insist that 60 votes in the Senate are required to do any business at all in this town, a supermajority, then the responsibility to govern is now yours as well. Just saying no to everything may be good short-term politics, but it's not leadership.
Hey, with us now, Republican representative from Indiana, Congressman Mike Pence. Hey, Mike, it's very good to see you again. I'm curious about your decision not to run against Evan Bayh. We had Senator Bayh on a few days ago, and we put up a poll. You were a few points actually ahead of a very popular Democratic senator. Why didn't you make the jump and run for Senate?
Well, let me tell you, it was easily the hardest political decision of my career, Joe. Our family spent a long weekend in really prayerful deliberation, and we ultimately came to the decision. I'll leave it to people like you whether or not we would have been able to succeed in that race. But for us, in my role as chairman of the House Republican Conference, I just believe that my duty was right where I am right now, working with our team to restore a conservative majority to Capitol Hill. I really believe that Republicans will retake the majority in 2010. We're going to make history when we do it, and we're going to begin then in that victory to have the ability to turn back this tide of borrowing and spending and bailouts and takeovers. And so that it was really a choice for me of where could I make the most difference for the things that are most important for me this year. And our family believed that was to stay in the House, stay in the fight, and be a part of a victory for conservative values.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you this question. Though. So you think that the Republicans may take over the House in 2010, and I think you may be right. And, of course, it's always possible that a Republican candidate can come forward and win the White House in 2012. If that happens, would you like the Republican agenda of tax cuts and more freedom and a stronger military, or whatever you think it is, would you like that to be stopped at every turn by 41 Democrats filibustering every single bill? Or does the Republican Party actually have a responsibility in Washington, D.C. to allow some of Barack Obama's agenda items to at least be voted on up or down?
Well, look, I'm somebody that, I think it's kind of amazing that you've had the death of democracy in a Democratic Congress in the last 3 years, Joe. It's a very different place than when you served here, whether it's spending bills, appropriations, or otherwise. Republicans have been shut out of the legislative process almost entirely on the floor and substantively in negotiations. We're going to welcome the president to our House Republican Conference retreat tomorrow in Baltimore. The president last night, said, if you all have ideas on how we can lower the cost of health insurance, better ideas, bring them to us. And I guarantee you tomorrow, House Republicans are going to take advantage of the president's attendance, and we're going to hear him out. But we're also going to make sure he knows our alternatives on health care, energy, budget, economic stimulus, which we offered last year, as you know, but they were summarily rejected by the administration and by Democrats. This is the Congress is in fact intended to be a place of give and take. You allow the democratic process, the legislature to work its will. We absolutely need to get back with that. And when Republicans take the majority in 2010, we're going to reopen that process and turn on the daylight and let the legislature work its will.
All right, the New York Daily News' Mort Zuckerman is with us. Mort, your question for Congressman Pence.
Congressman, the president said he wants to have another jobs program, and if you are talking about the need for him to reach across the aisle, what kind of things would you like to see in that jobs bill that would involve Republican support for it?
Well, let me say, Mort, when you look at the Republican alternative to the economic stimulus last year, our proposal was about $350 billion in fast-acting tax relief that would have cost, by definition, half as much as the stimulus bill, and using their economic models, it would have created twice as many jobs. The disappointing thing about last night to many of us on the Republican side of the aisle was, we were asking, where was the pivot? We were told over and over the administration was going to pivot to jobs, pivot to fiscal discipline. And while there was a nod to that, all we heard in the president's call for a new jobs bill, his defense of the failed economic stimulus bill of last year, was just more of the same old, and we just need new ideas, across-the-board tax relief that takes effect now, fiscal discipline that takes effect now. That's what will get the economy moving.
Hey, Congressman, Mike Barnacle here. Last night, I'm sure the people in Indiana are no different than people in Massachusetts and Oregon. They constantly hear people constantly complain about the sluggishness, the pace of Congress. Nothing ever gets done. These people don't work together. Can you give us this morning 2 or 3 things itemized last night or mentioned last night that you, the Republicans, could agree with the president on right now, today?
Absolutely. I think the president's call for supporting our troops, both downrange, in harm's way, and when they come home, are things that Republicans have supported the president's on beyond politics, and will continue to do that. I also think the president's call for fundamental earmark reform and transparency was welcome. Mike, you know, we've been battling among our own back when we were the majority on that issue, and that was welcome indeed. The call for a spending freeze. I personally urged the president in the cabinet room in December to veto last year's omnibus spending bill and send us a continuing resolution and freeze spending at current levels this year. He didn't do that. We welcome the call for a spending freeze, but you know, it's frustrating to hear the president say, here's all this new spending we're going to do. We're going to do health care. We want our energy climate change bill. And starting in 2011, we're going to have a spending freeze. That had to be frustrating to millions of Americans. But we still welcome the call for fiscal discipline, and we'll work in good faith.
All right. Congressman Mike Pence live from the Capitol for us. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you all.
All right. That's Mike Pence.